Hello, and welcome to Cancer Be Gone Speaker Series. My name is Shona Williams, and I'm the host and the founder of the series. Today, we are talking about how to restore, renew, and realign your body systems so that your body can do what it was designed to do, to fight for itself. Here we have today a wonderful and dynamic uh, team member on the team. I'm so excited to have her on today. Michele Caws from the School of Royal Yoga has joined us today to talk about Ayurveda, a wonderful and very awesome technique that has been in practice for centuries. I'm sure you'll enjoy her presentation. Welcome, Michele.
Thank you so much, Shona. It's lovely to be here with you on this Sunday morning. I'm delighted to share everything about Ayurveda. And I love what you said too about caregivers and patients, because it's important that everyone be taken care of in the best possible way. And Ayurveda has some wonderful tips for how to balance life for everybody. So care for the caregiver is just as important.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. It is early and it is Sunday, so we appreciate your being here to educate us. So, could you please give us a little bit about your background and what brought you to this plateau in your life as far as your following and your study of the Ayurveda lifestyle?
Well, I'm a holistic health counselor, and I'm also a yoga instructor and Ayurvedic wellness counselor. And all of these come together to bring the science of Ayurveda and living a life in balance. I actually, when I was young, worked in technology, financial technology. I used to develop computer systems. And while I loved what I did and it was so creative, I really had this need to do something different where I could really get out there and help people. And was raising 3 young children, and they all had, health issues, food allergies, food sensitivities. And in helping them, I realized I was healing myself. And in taking care of these little ones, I realized how much everything was needed, because there was so little information available out there at that time. So what I ended up actually doing is certifying as a holistic health counselor and a yoga instructor. And the two together made perfect sense, because one taught you how to heal your body, the other taught you how to bring body, mind, and spirit together. And I came to realize that there really isn't one unique way to do this. It's a balance for everyone. And we really do need to heal through all the layers and through all the bodies. And Ayurveda is an absolute complement to that. Ayurveda is the science of life. So just as yoga was given to these rishis, these healers, more than 5,000 years ago, yoga and Ayurveda, the instruction is actually all written in the very simplest of texts. And when we interpret them today, what we realize that a lot of these things that have been practiced for thousands and thousands of years are actually being proven with medical science. So that's what I love about it, is it's the simplicity of life, the balance of life. And we can get into the details a little more, but it goes hand in hand with living a holistic life and learning how to take care of yourself on every level.
Well, I love that you mentioned that you had children and that brought you to this plateau in life. Were you able to manifest these changes in your children as well?
Absolutely. The children are all grown now, living very healthy lives, and they've carried that learning with them. The children had a lot of food sensitivities. We had celiac disease in the family, which we did not even know about. I grew up with it, not even knowing what it was or that it even existed. And in helping the children to heal and to find their balance, I started to heal myself and made all those connections. In those days, a gluten-free diet was not even fashionable like it is today. It was something that wasn't even heard of. So everything had to be made from scratch, and I had to do a lot of research of how to find that balance. And what we found is that when you start to establish a balance, you can heal your body with whole food. And I really do believe that. Let thy food be thy medicine and thy medicine be thy food, because that's the fuel that we take in. And when we complement that with the aspect of energy and understanding what works for each one of us, that's really when you find the balance. So there's no one right answer. There's no one right diet. Each one of us is unique, and each of my children were unique and required something a little bit different. And that's what you find when I work with people in the community, is that each one of us had these ideas. We read something, oh, I need to work on a paleo diet, I need to be a vegan, I need to be a vegetarian. But really what we need to do is see, what does this body need? And that's what's important, and we balance from there, because there really is no one answer. It's a combination of things, but we really have to understand who we are and what we need. And that's how the children healed, because each one of them was unique, and we found the balance that worked for them. And as adults, they have to carry that into their life today, and they do. Does that
That's
answer your
beautiful.
question?
Yes, yes, it really does. It does answer it in a little bit more also. So you said that they're grown now and they're healthy. So that's really important that we understand that they came from a certain place in their lives where there was a dis-ease or dysfunction in the system, and you were able to incorporate this lifestyle into your lives and you know get them to where they wanted to be, living a healthier, happier lifestyle.
Yep.
And so, yes, that answered it in completion. Thank you. What I would like to know, though, a little bit more, if we could, if I could ask you, what is Ayurveda exactly?
Ayurveda is the science of life. It's all about learning how to live a life in balance, in its simplicity. And with Ayurveda, it's a sister science to yoga. So they really go hand in hand. One works more specifically with the physical things in life, like healing the body, living with the seasons, with the seasons of the day, the life, the time that we're in. And it works very intricately with yoga, because yoga works on all the subtle bodies too, right? It gets all the energy channels flowing and open. So the two come together as a sister sciences, and it's really, and its simplicity is living your life in balance, which what most of us find in this go, go, go world of ours is that we lose that balance so easily without even realizing it. So to find that balance is how we begin to restore the balance. We start to look at where it's out of balance, and then what can we do to just make some subtle changes. And it's very often just in the things that we do every single day. We don't realize that we're hurting ourselves.
And
It's
when
a
you
good place
say
to start.
hurting ourselves, you're saying that the energy or the balance is becoming misaligned, right? So we
Absolutely.
need to we need to make sure that that alignment is in place so that we can the body can heal. So that, in addition to other things, I'm hearing is what Ayurveda is.
Yes, and we need to open up all those channels so that they can flow freely, right? So when energy can flow freely, as you said, aligned, that's when true healing actually begins, because the little things that we do in our everyday lives very often over a period of time may cause some blockages in that flow of energy. And as we free those blockages, so the body can really create and open those channels that it needs to really optimize health and well-being, and to heal thyself.
Yeah, to heal thyself. The body is an amazing machine. And one of the biggest reasons that I started the series was to promote that, to promote the fact that the body is science. It is an amazing machine. It's set on autopilot. So that autopilot is something that we don't really quite understand. I mean, we do have um, very various levels of scientific knowledge, but to understand the body on a whole, we have a lot of work to do.
Yes, we
So
do.
So I'm glad to be able to bring you to the stage and talk about Ayurveda because it talks about that energy. It talks about that alignment that the Western culture, Western medical community doesn't really get into, but it's so very important, you
Right.
know.
And once again, we work on bringing body, mind, and spirit together as one. And that's really when our healing begins. And we begin to come in touch with that and to not be separate from any of that, because it's very easy for us to be separate. And we really want to find that oneness and that place of union. So we create that open space within the body. We can release all those emotions that are stuck. And truly, that's the beginning of our healing, is when we have that awareness of how we can do that.
Now, how do you go about opening those channels and what are those channels?
Loaded question. We have energy channels in our body, and when we offer, for example, some very simple breathing practices, some very simple movements in yoga, we begin to open up those channels. And we have, it's almost like a subtle body, right? If you rub your hands together and you bring the warmth, you can actually feel that there's an energy field around your hands. It's not just a hand, there's another layer, and there's many layers. And how do we open these channels? When we offer simple breathing and we create a space where we can actually move the body in a very simple way. A lot of our yoga poses and our breathing and stretches actually help to open those channels. And then we open the energy centers so that things can begin to flow more freely. So that's how we work with energy. And then we can also start to find that balance and open those channels with the little things that we do every day. For example, if we're not getting enough sleep at night, simplest example, those channels become blocked and clouded. You know what it's like when you wake up in the morning and you're not feeling refreshed, right? Things are blocked. So your body is actually giving you a message that you need to change something. You need to open those channels on the simplest level. So if you have several nights in a row where you're not getting a good night's sleep, you wake up every morning, you have a foggy head, it's hard to get moving, then you start looking for a cup of coffee to wake you up. Your body's actually telling you that those channels are blocked. And in Ayurveda, we call that armor or toxins in the body, and they're blocking those channels. So part of our work is to burn up those toxins or armor for the body to do that in a natural way. And then we can free the toxins so that the body, in combination with movement and drinking enough water, etc., just very simple, can start to make those initial shifts.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining that. Also, I appreciate the fact that you talked about yoga. I was given the blessed opportunity to have your class at the School of Royal Yoga just recently. So let me try that again. I was given a wonderful opportunity to attend your class at the School of Royal Yoga. So I appreciate you talking about that a little bit more because we have different levels of yoga. And you talked about layers. I'd like to ask a question about the different levels of Ayurveda because you did touch upon that a little bit when I was speaking to you there. Could you talk about that a little bit here?
Ayurveda, as I said, is the science of life. And the rishis were given in meditation all of the information, and it was recorded in these Vedic texts. And there are many Vedic texts that actually give the essence of Ayurveda with some very specific instructions on what to do and how to do it and how to live your life from the time you're little, moving through the different seasons of your life until you're a little, a young child, a young adult, and then we move through into full adulthood, and then we go back to being, as we revert to seniors. So what happens is through all of that time, there are layers and energy that shift. And our goal is to find that alignment, living in harmony with these changes in our life. We also need to live in harmony with the seasons, right? So right now we are in winter time, it's dry and it's cold. Summertime is going to be warm, and it's a different element. So in Ayurveda, in the very basics of it, and from the time of creation, we work with these 5 elements. So as we start to understand who we are and what they are, we refer to these elements as they are in nature as well. So the first combination of elements is called air and ether, or space. And this is the Vata element. So this is one of the foundations of understanding the elements and the doshas in yoga. So we'll go into a little more detail with it, but the next combination is fire and water. And these work together in these pairs, and this is known as pitta. And then kapha is the water and earth combination. And these elements are the foundation of a basic understanding of Ayurveda and how Ayurveda works. So we, at the time of our conception, are a unique combination of those elements. And every one of us is different. You may have a little more fire and water in you. I may have a little more air and ether in me. But we have this unique combination of elements. And from the time of our conception, this doesn't change throughout our life. That's the essence of who we are. That's our makeup. So our goal is to learn to balance that, who we really are. So we may find that through life, those elements go out of balance in our body, or those doshas, and we work to maintain that. Now, I'm talking at a very basic level. We can obviously go into more detail later on. But really, when we understand this combination of elements, really, in the simplest form, it's every one of us is unique, and our goal through life is to find and stay in the balance of who we really are. And that's what the healing in Ayurveda is. And when we can actually identify and come to know who we are and what our true combination is, then we can start to find that harmony in ourselves, in the time of our life, because it's going to be different from when we're children as when we're older, and the seasons, as the seasons change. We want to be more in harmony with those seasons. And also the times of the day. You know, there's different times of the day that make more sense for us to find that balance and that harmony. So, for example, just the simplest thing, our digestion is strongest in the middle of the day. We call that the digestive fire. If we go back to those elements of water and earth and fire, and we put them all together, what you'll find is that the water and the fire is the strongest in the middle of the day, and that's going to help your digestion. So eating your biggest meal when your digestion is strongest is going to make the most sense for optimizing your health. If you're eating a really heavy meal and then you're going to sleep at night, that's going to be sitting in your body and not be digested as well. So it comes down to basics, and that you can really tie it into everyday practices as well. So when we start to talk about all these elements and how they come together, it can be a little confusing and overwhelming at first, but the more you understand the simplicity of it, the more it actually helps to understand what you have in you and how you can balance it. So don't be overwhelmed the first time you hear it. We'll certainly explore it more and more over time, and it starts to make sense as you can really relate it to your everyday life.
So I appreciate that explanation. There seems to be a lot of variables, even when you get down to an individual, because that individual might be different as a youngster, and then they change into a young adult, and then they change into an adult. Just like there are variations in the day, just like there are variations in the seasons. So are we, a combination of a variety of different changes in ourselves? So
we have our foundation. So we have our constitutional type, or our prakriti, it's called, and that would be our unique combination of these elements. So we each have our unique combination, but the world around us, the time of day is changing, the seasons are changing, and the times of our life are changing. So we need to be able to recognize these and shift and move with them. So for example, your diet is going to be very different in the summertime than what it is in the wintertime, because the summer is the pitta time. It's that fire, right? The heat. And so we may be eating a lot more raw foods. We may be eating things like fruits, which are cooling. We may be eating more salads. In the wintertime, it's vata, which is air and ether. What does that mean? It's the qualities of each of these elements are really what is the key. And the qualities of vata are going to be dry and cold. So if we're eating dry, cold foods, we're going to take ourselves out of balance. So if I'm eating salads in the middle of winter, I am going to be aggravating those qualities of dry and cold. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So we want to find, that's why understanding the balance. So what is the opposite of dry and cold? It's going to be warming foods, right? Moist foods. A little extra oil in our diet is going to make a huge difference to balancing ourselves better now. So we got a little off track with that, but I just wanted to explain how important it is to be able to recognize those elements, and then we can really see how we need to balance in a simple way, so simple as changing your diet. And I'm sure you've spoken a lot about, seasonal eating, local eating, and how important that is. And that's really key, because one of the key things in Ayurveda is that the most important thing that anyone can do is to be able to get their body to a point where it digests the food well. So your digestion, your fire element needs to be working at its optimum, because so often when we have food that's not being digested in the body, it's going to build up toxins over time. So all those channels need to be open, and we need to really work on optimizing that digestion. That's the key element of Ayurveda. If we do nothing else, we will definitely work with that.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, because the digestion is important. We're talking about how to renew and revitalize, restore the body system. So the body systems rely on that fuel that come into it to help the body to repair itself, to help the body to protect itself. So we're talking about how the importance of food, the energy of food. And so in Ayurveda, I do realize that the food is important, the food is key, which is one of the real reasons why I wanted you to come and talk about this, because there's some really very dynamic components in this practice, in this therapy, in this treatment, that speak to cancer patients, that speak to their caregivers, especially, so that when they are preparing the foods, they know about the spirit of that food. They know about the balance and the harmony that it needs to bring into the individual with the cancer, so that it can help to overcome it. A lot of times they're preparing foods that are completely misaligned or out of alignment with healing.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And when you said that about the energy too, what's most important is the energy that we put into that food preparation, right? So Ayurveda is all about, not only about, but it brings in those aspects of eating a healthy diet, eating whole foods, going back to Mother Nature, but it's also about the essence of how that food is prepared with love. So if we are preparing a nutritious meal, we are pouring our heart and soul into it with love. So as a mom cooking for children, as an example, that was one of the things I could really give my children. Was, it didn't matter how simple the meal was, but I put my love into it. And that's a whole part of healing. When we are sitting down to eat, we give thanks for the bounty. That's an important part of an Ayurvedic practice. And just being aware of the essence of the energy that you're taking into your body is huge. It's a very big part of healing and staying healthy and balanced. Because how often are we sitting down with a plate of vegetables and we don't even know where they come from, right? So really
Mhm.
the essence of understanding the effort of the farmer and what went into that food, and that it is organic and clean, and that it's been grown with love. So a lot of energy goes into that. Then there's the preparation of it, and then all of that takes place before it ends up on your plate. So you may be eating the most beautifully well prepared meal with the best organic ingredients, but if the person who prepared it for you was having a fight with whomever at the time, that energy is sitting right around your food. So it's really important that when we're preparing food as healing for ourselves and for those that we take care of, we really need to make sure that we are in a good space, because that energy is transferred through the food. And that may be a new concept for some people to understand, but really that's what healing is all about. It's about the energetics of everything. So the quality of the food is really important, and the love that goes into it, and the essence. And the best way we create that space for healing.
Yes, and I'd also like to lend to this portion of the conversation that there were studies that were done on energy vibrations, energy in the form of vibrations, and how it changed the water
Yes,
molecule.
the crystals of the water, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is very real and it's been tested. Lots of things that, like I had alluded to before, aren't studied, in this culture, in this Western culture. But these are these are truths, these are facts that need to be considered when we're talking about healing, and especially when we're talking about cancer, because cancer is running rampant through the globe. So we have to be mindful of all of the tools in our arsenal, like Ayurveda, to help our communities, our global community, to heal, properly, without poisons and drugs and different things like that. But real tested techniques, methodologies that can help to heal cancer and help the body to fight for itself.
Yeah, in Ayurveda, there are many different levels of therapies too. So the foundation, and we'll go into that as we move through, is the importance of your own foundation. Of one of the first things you do is you begin to strengthen your digestion system. So you want to strengthen that digestive fire. That's really important. And in doing that, your body is going to start to release toxins naturally as you ramp up your digestion. We'll speak about how to do that. And then once you get to a place where the body is ready, because you have to clean up the toxins first a little bit, is you then can follow some of the different protocols that they have in Ayurveda. So there's many different kinds of treatments too that are offered. They do Abhyanga massages, and you can learn to do those for yourself, where you oil the body. So just a natural self-healing. And these become a part of your everyday practice too. There are different types of massages where they apply different kinds of heat to the body, or not, depending on your constitution. It's very much determined on you and where your body is and what you need in that moment. Sometimes just the very gentlest amount of movement on the body is fine to help to release. Sometimes you may need a little more, and it works very well for all kinds of things that are happening, but very gentle and in a way that your body is then encouraged to begin its own healing process. So there are many, I guess my point was that there were different types of Ayurvedic treatments that are part of the healing protocol that can be very helpful.
Hmm. Absolutely. And the lymph nodes is something that we were focusing on in one of our earlier interviews, as well as the sleep, and how important that sleep was. Audrey Lee had spoken about how important the sleep, and also Beth Hauser Coughlin, Living Foods Institute, she spoke about the sleep and the lymph nodes. So the massage therapy, that technique really focuses on releasing the toxins from the lymph nodes, which is really important when we talk about healing. Detoxification is an important part of that healing process. So especially if you are a patient on chemotherapy or radiation, there's a lot of toxicity in your body. And so this is an important aspect of the healing process, to remove those toxins in your body. When I was looking into the, the Ayurveda and different levels of it, I was reading up on it. It talked about doshas, and you had mentioned it just recently. Could you explain that term, and what is it? What does it mean in Ayurveda, and what does it mean to healing?
Your doshas are your constitutional types. So it's the type, we spoke a little earlier about those elements of air and ether, and the combination of those working in harmony would be known as vata or vata dosha. And the properties of or qualities of dosha are that dry, cold. Pitta is the combination of fire and water, and these elements work in harmony to form the pitta dosha. So pitta dosha is your constitutional type. Once again, it would be determined at your time of conception. Kapha is the combination of water and earth, and its qualities are going to be a little heavier, a little wetter. So each of these have a unique set of qualities that qualify the elements as they come together to work in your body. So as we said earlier, it is determined at your time of conception. This doesn't change, but what does change for us as we go through our lives is that we may be depleted or aggravated in those doshas. So in forms of Ayurveda, we may have excessive vata in the body. And excessive vata leads to a restless mind. You'll start to feel pain, maybe in your joints, as an example. And as these elements go out of balance, just from our everyday living and the choices we make in life, our goal in Ayurveda is to rebalance them as quickly as possible. So if we are aware of who we are and what we are, we can begin to restore that balance. We'll be aware of it more quickly, and we can start to restore it before it actually manifests into imbalances in the tissues. We have all of these elements within us. It doesn't mean just because you're a vata person that you only have air and ether. You have all of these because these elements make up all the workings in your body. So your digestion might be governed and stimulated by fire, but the way that it moves through the intestine and the way that you absorb the nutrients may be related to your vata element, for example. So these issues with breathing may be related to an imbalance in the kapha in your body, or the earth and the water. So it really depends on, as much as possible, when we can start to understand who we are, what's right for us, and then to make little changes along the way that are going to help us to find that balance. Those with a more vata constitution, the air and the ether, more difficult, heavier foods. So strengthening their digestive system is going to help. And when any of us have a digestive system that's not optimal, what happens is that it leads to unprocessed food. In Ayurveda, they call it uncooked because it's not able to be fully cooked within your digestive system. So then that can lead to depositing toxins in your body that your body is not able to release completely. And when those channels are not open, and then you're putting in things, it's like, you have to keep the pipes clean on every level, right? If you have a fireplace and you have a chimney and you don't clean the chimney, it's going to get clogged after a certain amount of time. If you're going to be running a fire, you need to clean the chimney so the smoke can flow freely. You want to be able to do the same thing in your body, is keep the channels open. I'd like to step back just a moment. You mentioned the lymphatic system. Lymphatic system is one of the first things in Ayurveda that needs to be addressed, is because it's getting everything moving. And that works so well with our practice of yoga as well. There's some herbs that really help the digestive lymphatic system to clear, but it's also important that you learn to tonify the body and to move that lymphatic system, right? The heart pumps the blood through the body. The lymph needs to be moved. It needs a little help. So a lot of our yoga practice, even something as gentle as a relax and restore practice, will actually help to move the lymph. And because stagnant lymph is when the body becomes diseased. So we've got to keep it moving. We've got to keep it helping to release toxins out, because that's what its job is. So it can be very gentle. It doesn't have to be too extreme. I wouldn't recommend anything that is too intense for anyone who's on a program of getting well. They really need to work on the gentlest form of healing and giving the body ways to balance nice and easily.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. I often wonder in this discussion, though, about the children, because there are a lot of children that are being diagnosed with cancer, how they can really understand themselves, because you talk a lot about understanding ourselves and knowing, or getting in touch with what we are and what we need in order to really do well with this type of therapy. So you've had experience firsthand with your children and applying this lifestyle to them as they grew up. What would be your recommendation for anyone on the line who's a caregiver for a child with cancer? How are they supposed to, come into a reality or knowledge of the person, the youngster, the infant, or the child that they're caring for?
We have to do, as adults taking care of children, being the caregivers, we have that responsibility of educating ourselves in the best way that we can about what we have to deal with. And when you start to understand these elements, so you could work with an Ayurvedic counselor and you could begin to find the elements in your children and understand them so that you can help to balance them a little better. You'll also find, though, from just the basic level, there's a lot of simple things that we can do. I honestly believe children want to eat good foods. They want to eat healthy foods. And when we give them enough choices, they will actually balance their own diet in the best possible way. Their bodies intuitively have that intelligence that really needs to eat well and to thrive, and it's just become clouded over time because of all the adverts that they watch on the television, what they see their classmates eating, and it really begins with the foundation at home. So the more we introduce them to a variety of healthy foods and fruits and vegetables, and actually from really young, we can get them participating in their own health, and they'll start to realize. One of the exercises I used to do with children was we'd make a list of simple foods, and then they would, I'm talking about 5, 6, 7-year-olds, they'd start to express how it made them feel. An example that just comes to mind, my son was very little, and he said, every time I eat eggs, I feel sleepy. So he made the connection that eggs made him feel sleepy. And then as a parent, you can start to notice, well, if they eat something that has a little food coloring, and are they hyperactive? How does it affect them? What is their sleep rate? If some children have food sensitivities or are not digesting food well, they may have a very restless sleep. Or you might find that they just literally, after eating something, they get a brain fog and they zone out. So we start to make these observations. So yes, we can work with the elements and how to balance them, but on the simplest level, pay attention. Start to notice, keep a food journal, and you'll start to see a pattern over time. And then you can start to modify, what you offer them. Maybe they feel more energized when they eat their broccoli. Maybe they eat broccoli before they take a test and they're more focused. Whatever it is, the food that we all take in becomes the cells in our body, right? It's infused with that energy too, of what goes into it, and it starts to form who we are. So Yeah, observation, food journals are really great. And you definitely will see a pattern and a shift over time.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about what goes into the body, and you just explore that a little bit, go a little deeper with that. As far as Ayurveda is concerned, are there particular spices that you recommend, or that you are more inclined to advertise or promote, I guess I should say? I take this from your class because your class talked about some really wonderful spices and they were very enjoyable. Some of us might not know what they are. Can you talk about some of the spices?
Sure. In Ayurveda, as I said earlier, one of our key things to do is to improve our digestion, right? To stoke up the digestive fire, so that when we're eating, our food is completely digested, so that it can give us the nutrients that we need and the energy. So in Ayurveda, we use a lot of different spices in our everyday cooking that really help us to keep that digestive fire strong. They increase the bile flow. They help the pancreas to work in an optimum way. They decrease gas and bloating in the body, because that's one of the signs that the body is not digesting well. They improve fat and sugar metabolism, and they just support the whole microbiome, so as far as promoting the health that way. So just not to overwhelm anyone, and just to give a few simple spices, one of the few, there's like 5 basics that we really think are, and we know are helpful to include. So fennel is very easy to include into our diet. Coriander, cumin, ginger, and cardamom. These spices are probably things that most people have in their cabinets, and you can start to increase those more and more. What they actually do is each one of them is imbued with an energy. The first few are seeds, and seeds have the life force, right? If you take a little seed and you plant it, it's going to grow into a beautiful plant, into a tree. And by eating just those simple seeds, you take that whole life force and energy into your body, and it has the natural wisdom of intelligence that's going to do that. So fennel, for example, is cooling, right? If you go into an Indian restaurant, for example, after a meal, when you leave, you might see a dish of fennel seeds with a little teaspoon, and people eat the fennel seeds as they leave. That's a traditional practice. Why is that done? Because fennel really helps digestion. It helps gas and bloating, for example. So taking a few of these seeds in really helps. You can just chew them. People look at me and say, what, chew the seeds? But there's lots of ways that we can do this. For example, a very traditional Ayurvedic tea is called CCFT, coriander, cumin, fennel. And you can heat these seeds and make a tea that you can drink to soothe digestion. And children can have it quite safely as well. There's a couple simple ways you can do it. A more traditional way is to actually boil the seeds. So you would have an equal amount of coriander, cumin, fennel, say 1 teaspoon of each, for example, and you would boil that with a liter of water. And you would let it simmer for about 15 minutes, and then you could strain the tea. And you could drink that throughout the day. It's very cleansing, it's very cooling, it's actually very alkalizing, which is good too for anyone who is trying to rebalance their bodies. You want to alkalize your body as much as possible, and that will help for sure. We can take some of these seeds and we can add them to our cooking, for example. We can roast a few seeds, maybe in a little ghee or coconut oil, and then we can add them to our lentils, if we're making a lentil soup, for example. Cardamom tends to be a sweeter taste in the body. It actually helps if you can grind cardamom. You can put it in your desserts. You can add it to, if you're a caffeine drinker, coffee or tea, you can add cardamom to that as well, because it really helps to negate some of the negative energy from caffeine, that rush we get. It's one of the key ingredients actually in a chai tea. The chai tea is a very simple Ayurvedic way of drinking, and it's very helpful there too. So ginger is another one of my favorites, actually. Just the good old ginger root. If you peel the ginger root and you grate it into different soups and stews, I even like to add it to rice, because it's adding that little bit of spice and seasoning for taste, and Ayurveda is all about the different tastes. We could spend a whole day just talking about the taste, but it stimulates the different tastes. But it gets into that digestion once again, and it helps to strengthen. You can grate a little ginger and put it in hot water, and you can drink it. If you want to stimulate your digestion before a meal, another example would be to have just like a half a cup of ginger tea that you've made with freshly grated ginger, and you drink that a little before your meal, and it's going to stimulate your digestion. The best thing about all of these spices and using them is that then they become a natural medicine for your body that's going to increase your digestion. And you don't become dependent on taking things that are good, like digestive enzymes, for example, can be really helpful for a little while, but then your body becomes dependent on them. Whereas when we're just adding these natural spices to our food, that it kind of resets the body in a way, and you can, increase or decrease as you need them and to your taste.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. I appreciate you also mentioning that as you go out the door of a restaurant, you find fennel seeds. Normally, as we go out the door of a restaurant, they have sugary treats like
little
mint
peppermints, yes.
or something like that that's laden with sugar. And it doesn't have nearly the amount of energy or, qualities that these types of spices like fennel or cardamom, as you had given us during the class. These things, these seeds, these pods have an enormous amount of flavor, freshened your breath, and really just like giving you energy.
It's amazing that you could feel the enemy just from sucking on a cardamom pod. Now, most people would think, what, a cardamom pod? But it's actually really helpful for cravings too. It really, because these are imbued with their subtle tastes, and they actually support the sweet taste in the body. So sweet taste doesn't necessarily have to mean sugar. So you'll actually find that it can get you through those little sweet cravings or those little times. Sucking on a clove too is really good for cravings.
Oh, okay.
Something different.
I have a garden out here, and it's interesting that you should have mentioned about the children and nature and them finding their own balance with it, because the children come to the garden and they explore and they harvest and they pick and they eat. They have a whole experience out here in the gardens that I take care of. And it's interesting to watch them. It's interesting to watch that synergy, that communication between the earth and the child. So when we're talking about ourselves as adults, we have to watch, that interaction too, because it's so very important. Our spices, we can't just take pre-mixed spices and toss them into our food when we don't know what's in that mix. In a lot of cases, there are emulsifiers and different things like that that are in these spices that are pre-mixed. So I encourage, this is one of the reasons why I asked this question. I encourage the folks who are watching to be mindful of your spices. These spices carry intelligence, like you had mentioned. They carry intelligence.
Yes.
So when we eat them, they're engaging the body systems. They are interacting and communicating with our body and what our body needs. So it's very important. I appreciate you mentioning that.
Yeah, they all have their unique qualities, and the basic spices that we addressed today are actually, they're fine for all of the different doshas to eat. We eat them in moderation. We can release some of the seeds. We can actually warm in a little oil first so that their natural volatile oils of the seeds are released. It's fun to grind them, to put them in a grinder and to release them, and then their oils are released at that time too. And I loved what you said about the children in the garden, because I have a wonderful vegetable garden here. I'm very blessed to have the space to have it. And we eat out of it almost all year. We were actually still harvesting right until Christmas time, some of the greens. Right now it's a little hard with snow everywhere, but soon enough those things will be growing again. And because children, especially children, love to learn when we provide them the tools, they just love to learn more and more. And, some of the things we can do, even though we don't have a garden, maybe in the middle of winter, is we can grow some sprouts in a jar. Just take some lentils, cover them with a little water, leave them in a closet overnight, take it out. And then, if you take a mason jar and you just cover it with a paper towel and you rinse those a couple times a day, leave the jar upside down in a saucer. And before you know it, those lentils are growing little tails, and you have beautiful, fresh, live enzymes right there that you can sprinkle on to your food. And children love to do things like that because they participate and they watch it grow and they're energized by it. So when they're involved in a garden, when they're involved in creating their meals, it really helps them to, from a young age, to take that responsibility and to understand how much it helps them to heal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked a lot about sprouts earlier in the week with Sandor Katz. He's a fermentation specialist. So we were talking about the sprouting, and we were talking about the fermentation and Rejuvelac and all of those wonderful things that have to do with sprouts and fermentation. And yeah, so that's really interesting that you should talk about that. I just harvested chives just yesterday, even through the snow.
See, that life force just wants to keep going.
And it's wonderful to watch. It's wonderful to watch because there's a lot that's happening underneath the earth. And it's that energy that we put into it. What we get out of it is all about what we put into it, right?
And that's really what Ayurveda is all about. It takes us back to basics and helps us to live our lives in alignment with Mother Nature. We've moved so far from that. And getting back to the simplicity of the earth gives to us, we give back to the earth, and we start to form that full circle again. And that's really where everything, the healing begins. All of those foods that have that you've grown in your garden and you bring in, they still may have a little soil on them. They haven't been sterilized, and that soil, there's a whole life stream happening right inside there with all the little microbes and things that are actually going to nurture your body. So as much as possible, eating those fresh, healthy foods straight from the garden. In the summertime, visit all the farmers markets that you can, because that's what's growing at that time.
And it's always important. It's always important too to get twice as much when you talk about things that are in season, and try to freeze them, especially like the berries. Because you're freezing them, that portion, so that you can have it during the winter time when it's out.
In the science of with Ayurveda, actually, we want to eat foods as fresh as possible, and the practice of actually freezing foods is not truly recommended. In Ayurveda, as part of a healing protocol, you actually prepare and eat the food seasonably and fresh as much as you can within harmony. Does that mean that you can't ever have something that's like frozen berries, like you said? No. But for the most part, when we're healing the digestion, we want to eat warming foods that are prepared fresh, because that's when the energy is best. Once the food has been refrigerated or frozen, it's losing some of that energy. So a healthier person might cope with those better, but when somebody's actually in a healing state, we want to eat it as fresh as possible, and the simplest of foods that can be digested, which is why we would bring in some of those spices, and they would help the digestion. So a typical healing meal in Ayurveda might be something called khichdi. Khichdi is a combination of white basmati rice with split mung beans, and it's cooked together. You have some of those healing spices in there, maybe a little ghee, you could add some vegetables, and that actually would be super easy for your body to digest. And when you start to reset that digestion with those fresh foods, that's when everything starts to strengthen. And actually talking about khichdi, you and I had spoken about a spring reset, and that's something that we will be doing in March as we prepare for the change of season from going into the spring as we transition out of the winter. And that's a really good time for us to do an Ayurvedic reset. And an Ayurvedic reset would be the simplicity of making a fresh batch of this khichdi for several days and eating it fresh every day. So you would eat it for breakfast and for lunch and for dinner. And you might also add in, a vegetable soup could be added as well if that's something that you wanted to add in. Maybe a juice, for example. In the springtime, it's good to add some green juices. But we will speak more about that when we go through the program. But that's an example of how you would nurture your body and reset it. And doing that reset will then prepare you for the change of season as we move from the vata of winter to the kapha of spring. And kapha season is the water and the earth season. And that's when you see a lot of spring allergies, a lot of mucus symptoms. So in preparing the body and doing that gentle reset, it really helps you to move through the change of seasons in an Ayurvedic way.
And that is your free gift that you have to the audience also. So we will definitely be looking for that, looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Michele, for offering us your time and giving us this moment to explore Ayurveda and how important it is in the healing process, and how important it is to recognize where we are and where we are in nature and how that synergy happens. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And I would love to speak more about Ayurveda with anyone who would like to explore the topic in any way, shape, or form. We'll be letting you know about the spring reset. And I just wish everybody a wonderful, happy, healthy life. We're doing whatever we can do to make a difference, to heal, because it all begins with us and our connection with our divine self. So as we begin to heal ourselves through all of our layers, we can start to give more and share more. So I really appreciate your time and all that you do. Thank you, Shona.
You're welcome. And if you could just give us an idea of how to get in touch with you, any website that you want to just promote right now at the end of the interview.
Yeah, the best way to reach me is at michelecaws@gmail.com, michele.caws, CAWS@gmail.com. If you email me, I'll be happy to send you all the links. I'm also totally available through the School of Royal Yoga. And we actually do a lot of Ayurvedic and yoga workshops there too. So I'll make sure that I send that information out to anyone who emails.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michele, and you enjoy your day.
And you too. Thank you so much, Shona. Bye-bye.
Peace and light.